It's the Two Strange Podcast.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Two Strange Men. My name is Carl, and beside me is...
I'm back. It's Tom. I was going to say, it's your boy. I don't
It's your boy in the house!
I don't have the credit for that. It's me, Tom. You might remember me from last episode.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we're still equally as strange, and we're going to be talking about a strange topic to go along with the film that we've just watched. Now, we recently watched Donnie Darko, and so this is a companion episode for some of the strange topics that we show in a film. So you'll generally get a film episode and then a companion episode alongside. That's the general format, yeah?
Yeah, and this allows us a little bit more breathing space to really unpick the strange topics and more time to really think about what it is. So we get time to talk about the film and some of those topics, and then a companion episode to really get down and deep and pretend that we're way smarter than we are.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say pretend that we were waste men. You don't need to pretend that.
No, that's quite apparent to everyone listening.
All right, okay, so last week we looked at Donnie Darko, as I've mentioned, and come on, Tom, give us a quick recap. What was Donnie Darko?
So, Donnie Darko is a film from 2001 by Richard Kelly, and it explores the idea of tangent universes. It is considered quite a strange and mysterious film. We both watched the original, and then we watched the director's cut, and we talked about how the director's cut kind of underpinned the original mystery of the film, and we delved into some of the ideas of tangent universes and parallel universe, but we want to spend a little bit more time with that, don't we? And what is a parallel universe, and what does that mean for us as a species?
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a companion episode, so it would be a good idea to just go back and watch the other episodes if you haven't already. So yeah, I mean, obviously you're not going to need to do that if you have watched Donnie Darko and you know the basic premise, okay? Obviously, spoiler alert, I'm not going to do that every single time. This is a podcast that will be laden with spoilers throughout. I'm sorry, but that's essentially how it will be. You can't really do this any other way. But yeah, just to quickly recap with the whole idea of what Donnie Darko was, and I know you've just recapped, just carrying on. You know, we have some interesting sort of characters in there. We've got Donnie, who, you know, experiences this sort of almost like second life, you know, after a tragic event happens in a real universe. In his tangent, he's actually sort of like helped by this apparition, almost like a guardian angel or something like that, really, for him. It's Frank the Bunny. It's just a guy in a Halloween costume.
He's like correcting the course of history, isn't he?
Yeah.
Through this tangent universe.
Yeah.
To try and get the normal universe back to kind of where it should be.
Yeah, definitely. And there were some interesting like elements throughout that film. You know, Donnie ended up like foiling a paedophile's master plan, etc., before his universe collapsed in on itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting to note is that last week we made some assumptions on what the artifact that was described in Grandma Death's book. We said it was like a metal object and things like that. You know, in like ancient times, it said it could have been like a sword or something like that. We said it was the gun.
Yeah, we were pretty confident that it was the gun, and it was because it was something that was important, and the gun was at the end of the scene, and it kind of, you know, was the reason that Frank was the way that he was. So we were pretty confident the assumption was the gun, right?
Yeah. But I mean, like, what I did was I looked online to see what other people thought about that whole thing. I wanted to get some more ideas of where Richard Kelly got his ideas from, and you've got things like the DVD commentary and stuff like that. And what I found was an interesting Reddit post where someone had replied and they knew their stuff. It was like really deep, like detailed responses to a question. I just wonder how people actually have the time for that. They are like super fans of like this film. Who knows though? It might be Richard Kelly.
I was just about to say that is Richard Kelly in like a little spy outfit, just going
alternate accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on, Richard, we know your game.
But look, like it's your magnum opus. I'd understand.
Yeah.
You wanna defend that anyway. So So he basically said that this Reddit poster basically said that the object itself that we thought was a gun was actually the aircraft engine.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's that essentially creating that tangent universe, or no, it's the main facet of that tangent universe. But Richard Kelly essentially told us that through the DVD commentary, okay, and this is what this Reddit poster had presented, quotes from the DVD commentary, which I was quite impressed with. He basically said that it was, the point where it strikes 12 on the grandfather clock that they keep showing. It's at that point in time when it starts, and he writes the time code on his arm and stuff like that. Time's gonna run out, etc. You've got this amount of time left, etc. It's all about time. Yeah, and so you show that grandfather clock, which always I noticed had a smiley face on it. It had a sad face.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Because if you think about the opening shot of the film,
Yeah.
he wakes up in a field.
Yeah.
Now, spoiler, at the end of the film, the engine crashes and kills him in bed.
Yeah.
So, let's say that's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that tangent universe, it's got to start a couple of hours earlier for him to get out of the room.
Yeah.
To wake up in the field. So
Yeah.
it starting at 12 makes a lot of conceptual sense to me, because then if it starts at the point that it crashes, well, Donnie can't get out and he's dead anyway. Hence, the tangent universe doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah. So he is essentially like goaded by Frank, who's whispering in his ear, "Wake up," and he's like leaving and stuff like that. He's being visited by this being as well. There's all sorts of extra little concepts that you end up picking up when you sort of look at and link it to like further symbolism and myth and science and all sorts of things. And so this is what kind of this episode is going to be. So what this Reddit poster showed me through the quotes in the DVD commentary was that Richard Kelly kind of described the tangent universes as a branch that. Yeah, so I'll just read the exact quote here. So, and the voice comes out and the light comes on and it's like a branch now. We're in a new world and he's aware that he's being communicated to by this voice. Yeah? At some point in time, the tree is going to reject this branch. It's going to fall off as dead wood sort of thing. And then the universe is... or I guess the cosmos, we're going beyond the universe, the cosmos is restored, equilibrium is restored,
And it's funny, isn't it? Because you can't talk about the universe and life without talking about trees and seeds, and I'm sure we'll go in more depth about Yggdrasil and the World Tree and stuff at some point, but whenever you look at kind of creation myth...
Yeah.
Trees and this idea of branching is never too far away from all kind of life. And we see kind of seedlings and trees as this strong foundation for life. And if we're talking about tangent universes being these kind of extensions of the base tree.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it's a quite a striking visual image, isn't it? Is to have the idea of you've got your main trunk and then you've got all of these branches of parallel universes essentially coming off. So yeah, like at this point in time, you've got to take into account that like the idea of a tangent universe with that specific terminology that you've got in Donnie Darko, if you search that up, if you do some research into that, I don't necessarily actually find more responses to that other than, well, that was something in Donnie Darko. It's that specific terminology. But we do have that, and we will go into this and we'll talk about that. But it kind of feels like we're having to go on a tangent to actually just move into the actual main body and subject of it, which is the idea of looking at many worlds, looking at, say, parallel universes and how that sort of thing works. But yeah, I really like that analogy of, or at least that link to Yggdrasil. Yeah, I've got some other notes on that, so we'll be able to look at that in a bit more detail later. But yeah, like just the idea of a tree at the centre of beliefs, there are many religions that have that, isn't there? You've got Norse mythology, obviously. You've got the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, look at creation myth with Adam. The central character, really, if you break it down, isn't Adam and Eve, is it?
Yeah.
It's the tree of creation and the apple.
Yeah.
And it all kind of stems from there. Pun intended. It all stems from there, right?
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, like, it's the tree of knowledge. You know, specifically is how it's phrased in the Bible. You know, and that makes me think. You've got, and we will go into this in a bit more detail, but like the idea of looking at many worlds. You know, if he's eating that apple, maybe it's unlocking an understanding of the larger world, or the fact that there are like different planes of existence and stuff like that. So we'll be able to look at that in a bit more detail. I don't want to just go straight into that, because what I want to do is I want to have, like, you know, my main dinner before we have dessert.
Absolutely. Let's understand what we're actually talking about before we start talking about tree bark.
Yeah, barking up the wrong tree. Yeah, so I have to tell you, listeners, okay, that science is never going to be my strong point here, okay? I'm not going to be, like, wowing you with my explanations. I'm trying to just keep things as concise as possible, because I struggle with it, okay? And I'm likely to make mistakes as well, all right? You know, there's going to be scientists out there and everything like that who just want to be able to go, oh, actually, this is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, this isn't like, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson coming in to talk to you about parallel worlds right now. We're both a little bit out of our depth in terms of parallel universes. So we've done, I say we, you've done the research, but as I had a disclaimer at the end of the episode, we're not experts. There might be stuff that's wrong, but we try and do our due diligence to give you an understanding that makes us understand.
And look, at the end of the day, like, it will perhaps give you an opportunity to look at these subjects, and you'll find Neil deGrasse Tyson and things like that talk about that. But also some of the other things that we'll talk about here will be the things that Neil would just be like, oh, that's rubbish. Oh, it's actually like this. Yeah. But, like, you know, we're here to keep an open mind, and we're not here to basically, like, you know, give people like a new belief system or anything like that. We just literally going, hey, that's a cool concept.
Yeah. And just like film reviews, right? It's an opinion podcast with some factual information.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that we're going to share is theories.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might think, well, you know, I did A-level science, or I have a master's degree in science. That's great. Maybe you could come on and actually explain this better.
Or make your own podcast, damn it.
Yeah. But for now, you've got Cal's impressive notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the science bit. Right, so to understand parallel universes, we first need to talk about quantum mechanics, and that's the branch of physics that deals with very small particles, so tiny that they don't follow the normal rules of reality. Okay, so these particles don't exist in one state, they exist in all possible states at the same time, and this concept is called superposition.
If you could see my face right now.
Now, was that in a way that you could understand? Was that enough?
Yes, although my brain just goes, in all states.
Yeah.
Does that mean, like, it's
in
stable,
all 52 states? It's in Iowa, it's in Idaho, it's, I don't know the other states, California.
Yeah, we could probably get to 10 collectively, couldn't we? Interesting. But what is the impact of that?
Well, like, when I was looking at some explanations of all of this, no one needs to care about the impact. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone was basically saying, just live your life. You don't have to worry about any of that. It's no skin off your back. You know,
it exists. It's not gonna ruin your day.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, you know, I mean, like, let's try and get our heads around that. You know, like, I've got a table here, and that's full of particles. Okay,
yeah.
and I guess, like, because they're super small particles, you know, it might be something that's intangible and they're unable to actually, you know, see this. I don't know. But that particle that makes up that table also exists in any number of other million universes and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But then when we start talking about tangent universes and the possibility of universes changing, where the hell does that particle go? Is that particle still a table?
Well, that then kind of immediately makes me think of the butterfly effect, Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
The idea of one single kind of flap of a wing changing,
Yeah.
one tiny particle being misplaced,
Yeah.
will have a dramatic effect on the rest of events or
Yeah.
the biological makeup of something. So right now we are sat on a rather nice circle table that is made up of materials, and inside those materials are all of the atoms and the particles, right? If there was less particles or there was more particles, that kind of pliable structure might be more malleable. So the shape of the thing might be different. All you've changed is a couple of particles and how they react to each other, but suddenly wood's not wood anymore. It's
Yeah.
more pliable material. So
Yeah.
when you start to think that, it starts to become quite easy to see conceptually how things can change.
I don't understand it. Like, the thing is though, when people are talking about this subject, like every time that they pass from one subject to another, I'm just trying to find questions to like go back to them. Do you know what I mean? And so like it's difficult for me to then like carry on listening. My question to you whilst you were talking was, okay, but you've got a table now, okay? In every universe, is that particle part of the table, or is that particle now moving around the universe because it's in like a dog's bum or something?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
So you've got a bag of marbles.
Right.
If you take a couple of marbles out, that
Stick it-
marble's got to go somewhere. Is that what you're saying?
Stick it in the dog's bum.
Yeah, obviously. If it's not going to be used for a table, it needs to be in a dog's anus. but really, let's go with that idea. You've got that bag of marbles.
Yeah.
I remove 3 of those marbles.
Yeah.
That is still a bag of marbles.
Yeah.
Where are the other marbles going? What are those marbles going to contribute? Are they going to go on the floor and contribute to the scenery on the floor? Are they going to go in a dog's anus?
Yeah. But they're still okay. Yeah. All right. That's fine. So they're not existing in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what's important. Yeah. And when it comes to marbles, I've lost mine.
But then when you come back to this idea that I was saying, that those particles are no longer there, that bag of marbles, the weight of it, the shape of it has changed because you've removed those marbles. So our concept of what that bag of marbles is has changed. Because the weight has changed. The shape of it, there's less marbles in it, so it's a half full bag.
And then you have the butterfly effect, possibly, that could then have massive impacts on the rest of that universe,
Yeah,
etc.
like there's now marbles on the floor. I could slip and die, and then in that universe I'm dead.
Yeah. I like that, okay? Now, this debate that we're having at this point in time represents a change in ideas, okay? So, for example, you've got the Copenhagen interpretation, okay, of quantum mechanics that essentially posits that particles exist in superposition in all states until observed, okay? And so you have like a certain amount of criticism, like early on. So, for example, Albert Einstein famously had issues with this, saying God does not play dice with the universe. But it's later on. So, by the 1950s, a physicist called Hugh Everett, he basically suggested this theory that every possible outcome actually happens, or essentially created an idea that could allow for that to happen. There's no reason why every particle needs to be exactly the same within each of these universes. And so you then have the opportunity for tangent and going from one place to the other, etc. If you hit the snooze button on your alarm and wake up late in another existence, you're going to be getting to work on time, etc., and getting that promotion and stuff like that. But yeah, one thing also before we carry on is the idea of how these parallel universes originated as well. Essentially, you've got to go back to the Big Bang, and there is a time period within that massive expansion that was slower, and scientists believe or at least through one model of theory, is that all of this creation of different universes and things came during that early level of expansion. And they actually measure a time difference and can say that there was an earlier, slower level of expansion at the start. And they do this by measuring particles that are coming off of quasars, which are big, massive super black holes, etc.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the science. That's all you're getting, okay?
Well-
I can't do any more.
well, they say, don't they, that like there are things that happened in far galaxies millions of years ago that
Yeah.
we are only just observing now.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the light traveling and time dilation, over my head.
oh yeah,
But we are observing stars and galaxies dying out that in our through astronomy that have technically been dead
yeah,
for millions and millions of years.
yeah. I wonder, like, now that I kind of understand it slightly, I wonder, like, where you draw the line with the differences within universes, and how infinitesimal that would be. Like, where do you draw the line? It's like, think about however many million, trillion, billion, quadrillion, Googleplex, like, I don't know the number you'd be able to use. It's infinitesimal how many changes can happen, and like, it's all very well and good us talking about a table and saying, well, I could kick in that table, I could, like, elbow drop it and break it, but in another reality I decided not to do that because I wasn't recording a podcast or something. I'm not going to do that, but
Please don't. It's
yeah,
nice
please don't. It's no table. But, like, let's go back right from the start. You've got the expansion of the universe and things changing so ever many times, even during that period, on each of these universes. It's unfathomable to consider the possibilities.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? We can't conceptually grapple that within our small kind of universe. We can't conceptualize that massive amount of infinite possibilities.
Yeah.
And because I'm a dum-dum, I always think back to media and films,
Yeah.
and link that back. And every time I think, I'm just a tiny dust particle in the grand scheme of an infinite universes, I kind of think of Men in Black.
Yeah.
The end of Men in Black. Coming back to
I
this
love that
marble
film.
theme. Marble.
Yes.
Do you
I
know
do
what I'm going to
remember.
talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The last little bit.
yeah, and this giant kind of primordial being almost scoops up the many galaxies into and puts them in the marble bag.
Yeah. Is it a marble bag, or does he play snooker with them?
I kind of remember it as being a marble bag, but maybe I'm just really hooked on that idea
Yeah.
of like 11. But he scoops up several universes, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, I'm guessing it's a he. Could,
Yeah.
that's Norse.
It's like, what are alien pronouns? From just like, we've got he, she, they're humans, and obviously all the others. And then, aliens have got
Yeah, we don't know. I've just made a massive assumption.
Yeah.
But then it scoops up these entire... And that, to us, is completely unfathomable, right?
Yeah,
That
totally.
there's a whole different space out there, and we are just...
I want to add something else to that. Just another extra reference there is the TV series Red Dwarf. And they actually play snooker with planets in that, which is very similar, like, imagery to the... What's the word? The Big Bang. And, the main character who does this and all of that sort of thing, he actually created the universe and also fathered himself. It's got some really interesting concepts throughout that
Very
series.
nihilistic, though, isn't it?
I don't think so. I love it. I absolutely love it. But yeah, he's he's what's the word? Stranded, isn't he? Like, on a spaceship going through space, and the human race has been killed. So yeah, it's nihilistic in that way. But other than that, not really.
Just the concept as a whole of like these beings of unfathomable size are just playing games with universes, and we are literally just a collection of atoms. We're smaller than ants.
Yeah,
And as human beings, we don't see ants as anything, do we?
Yeah.
Because they're so small, and that's
Yeah.
to apply that to an even greater being. That's
Some people get scared of this. It's like, isn't
I
that
think
like
I am terrified.
thalassophobia? Isn't it like the idea of like, you know, like being in like the sea and imagining a
Yeah.
giant like
I feel sick.
creature.
I think I've got that.
Yeah. So it's something that's like so unfathomably big.
Yeah.
You know that you can't. You're getting into what's the guy, the writer like who created Cthulhu and stuff like that. We'll cover him. At some, you know.
'Cause that is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might cry at that episode.
But you know, like one thing to take into account is that we are also today going to be linking the idea of different worlds to different like god realms, essentially. You know, where each realm has its own god and stuff like that. You know, and we're not going to cover this later, but like, you know, just think of like Greek mythology, and you've got Hades, the realm of the dead.
Yep.
You know, and then you've got like Mount Olympus and stuff. I love the idea of like maybe you could just like go up to Mount Olympus. It just goes to show like how sort of limited that original idea was. But then it's symbolism, isn't it?
And then you push that forward to Norse mythology, and you literally have 9 realms, kind of, you know, almost stacked on top of each other. In some iterations, they are literally just planes of existence.
Yeah. So let's move on now. We're going to be talking about just the origins of the idea, and obviously we can look at religion, and we can consider that like an ancient origin, because these ideas are passed on and then evolve into things. But before that, let's just consider like ancient science and the origins of this like many worlds idea. So the idea of multiple realities specifically has been floating around, but a early Greek philosopher, you would call them, but essentially an ancient scientist, Anaximander, who's a Greek thinker, he lived in the same region as Aristotle. I mean, not at the same sort of time, but he might have been the teacher of Pythagoras. So a lot of his writings are actually lost, but he was one of the first people to develop cosmology, or the study and structure of the universe, you know. So that's obviously a term that we still use, cosmologists and stuff like that, you know, the type of people that would be talking about these subjects.
Yeah.
We are not those people. But yeah, what I liked about his ideas, I mean, like, he had loads of ideas. One of them, like, you know, he had that idea that the earth was flat, essentially, you know, it looked like a cylinder, etc., and, you know, sort of like floated in space without any sort of inertia and things like that.
Still a fairly prevalent theory in a very small minority of people as well.
It's a niche, but it's not that niche.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I'm not a spaceman. I've not gone into space, so I mean,
we could be on a coin.
Yeah, it's empirical evidence for some people, because, you know, they've seen it all and stuff like that. But I've just seen pictures. Maybe it's all just like an elaborate Stanley Kubrick film.
When this podcast reaches like its 1,000th episode, and we're as rich as Elon Musk, I'll take you out to see the globe.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get invited. We're on X now anyway, so Elon, you know, you can always listen to the podcast and you know, take us into space.
I want to call it Twitter.
Yeah, I can't call it Twitter.
It's Twitter, Elon. It's Twitter.
I'm worried he'll take us into space and leave us there. That's the problem.
Yeah, but at least we'd know.
Yeah.
If it's round or disc. So.
Hello, everyone. This is our last podcast. Yeah. We're running out of oxygen.
We're going to use our last breath to inform you that Tom was right.
Yeah. So where was I? Okay, so Earth is flat. You heard it here first. Moving on. What I really liked is this idea that he had. He coined a term to essentially describe the infinite, boundless energy and unseen force. You know, you would perhaps even consider this a similar sort of idea to, you know, God's Holy Spirit or something like that. He's like force that's all around and stuff like that. But he called it Apeiron. And I like the term.
Apeiron.
Okay. Yeah. It gave birth to everything. The reason why there was a Big Bang in the first place was because you have this oomph, this like force, this energy, and I imagine the energy or force or things like that like works within like 2001 Space Odyssey, this this sort of like unfathomable mystery unlocked of the universe, sort of thing, as the type of thing that you would use as a way to get your head around what Aperion would be. I just imagine the philosophers like, but and actually, what is this Aperion? Is like, it's just like, it's like,
It's onto something, right?
Yeah.
Because again, not a scientist, but that's atoms, right?
Yeah.
Everything that we can see and touch and feel is made and comprised of small particles.
Yeah.
The air, the water, bacteria, everything that we experience, like physically, is made up of atoms.
Yeah.
So is that Aperion?
Well, what's interesting is that his teacher, he taught Pythagoras, and before him he was taught by Thales or Thales. I don't know.
Something in the water in Greece there.
Well, it's funny you say water, because he thought that key to everything was actually water, the element of water. And what I like is the way in which this can then link back to our original film. So you've got Donnie Darko, and you've got like those chest tunnels.
The barrier element being water.
Yeah, the barrier element. I liked that sort of link, and I wonder if Kelly had all of these thoughts going through his mind and stuff like that. That's kind of inspired him to do that sort of stuff.
Well, if you look at evolution, right, and you look at kind of the origin of the species and bacteria and life, we all kind of originated from water to some extent, or needed water to be able to grow the bacteria.
Yeah.
So it is this kind of like life-giving element. So it makes sense that it's in all of our mythos, and it's in all of kind of.
It's in
this
all of
idea.
us. We're like 70%,
Yeah.
aren't we? The Earth is like 70%. So yeah, it's quite obvious why he would draw to those conclusions. They probably didn't even know what air was, but they had water. And Anaximander, when he thought of like Aperion and things like that, he also, within this line of thought, also considered that there are many different worlds. We don't have a lot of his writing, so I can't go into much detail there, but we know this at least, that he had alongside this a similar sort of idea than the many worlds theory that we've recently talked about, coined by Hugh Everett. But what I liked about it when I looked into this was that he didn't see them as permanent. He saw them as something that could collapse in on itself, much like what happened in Donnie Darko's Tangent universe. We have a quote. He wrote that all things must pay penalty and pay penalty and retribution to one another for their injustice, according to the disposition of time. And when you think about like the journey that Donnie Darko went through, I really enjoy that sort of like linking that quote to that. Whether or not he needed retribution or anything like that, but you're paying penalty to one another, etc. Donnie killed someone. He essentially got retribution himself. He was able to give retribution to a paedophile.
Yeah.
There was loads of stuff going on, and it's like, wow, those things, like Anaximander's quote, and then looking at Donnie Darko, they just match so well.
I wonder if Richard Kelly did the same sort of like delving into early parallel universe theory and kind of connected that with his own film.
The interesting thing about that film is if you look at his own like thoughts on it and his origins of the idea, he started just with the plane engine crashing into the house, and he went, okay, that's that. Where do I go from here? And then all of this stuff, came out. It's like, whoa, Aperion. So yeah, the Tangent universe corrects itself through its destruction, and it's not only in Anaximander's ideas that you have this idea of destructions of these parallel universes and stuff like that. So we're gonna delve into this now. We're gonna look at some of the more easier to recognize religious connections to parallel universes.
A theme that comes up a lot and will continue to come up a lot is this idea of rebirth, right?
Yeah.
So if a tangent universe is made, or there is a parallel universe, then the original, then eventually one of them will be destroyed, right? And that cycle of rebirth will continue, like a tree.
Like a tree, but also like many life, death, rebirth deities as well. You know, if you were to search for that, listeners, on Google, you'd be able to find like Wikipedia lists of all sorts of different gods within, you know, different religions and stuff like that that kind of represent these sort of characters. You know, within Norse mythology and stuff like that, you've got a couple, including Balder, Dionysus in Greek mythology. In Christianity, obviously, who's that one, Tom?
I'm going to take a little wild guess and say Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. Jesus Christ!
Yeah, lost an opportunity there, didn't I?
Yeah. To say, Jesus Christ, what the hell are you asking me? Yeah. But yeah, also, like, you know, Shiva, the destroyer, as well. There's loads of ones to choose from. So Hinduism is a big one. So they talk of different planes of existence, and they call them lokas, each with its own rules, beings, and even its own creator deity, which I believe is called Brahma, something along those lines. Anyway. It's not in my notes. But yeah, there's some real interesting quotes that you can get from the Hindu Puranas. They're not like snapping fish that eat like your toes or anything.
I'm glad
like
you
that.
said that, because I immediately went there.
I've probably mispronounced that. Puranas, I'm going to say, which are essentially, they cover all of the mythology and lore of Hinduism in like an encyclopedia form, which would be great. I'd absolutely love to be able to get my hands on that. You know, maybe we could like delve into that deeply if I could find maybe a film that best represents like Hinduism, maybe like
I'm
from
sure
like a Bollywood film. That would be interesting to
Yeah,
have a look at.
whack it on the list.
Whack it on the list. Yeah, we've got a huge list now. But anyway, so yeah, you've got these universes and stuff like that. I'm going to make a quote from Vishnu Purana, Book 2, Chapter 3. It describes how the lokas work. So, above the earth and over the 7 oceans is the sky, beyond which is the residence of the siddhas, the gods, and the great sages. Yeah? That's just an example. There is a huge amount of lore that would go into this. Obviously, you've got to take some of it with a pinch of salt, because maybe it's just a representation of symbolism. But then, like, you know, it's also ancient wisdom and things like that going into this to try and give you an entire thing, you know. You've also got, in Islamic mysticism, it discusses multiple heavens and unseen realms beyond our perception. And even Mormonism, in fact, actually, you know, some like early Mormon writers and things like that would essentially describe the idea of there being many worlds as something that is undeniable. It has a concept where individuals can ascend to create their own worlds as well, which is an interesting topic. And I will be leaving a lot of that for an episode on Mormonism, because there is a lot of films that we could potentially look at for that one as well.
And it's interesting, isn't it? We looked at the science, and then we've looked at the spiritual aspect, and there's loads of crossover there between the two. And coming back to this idea of planes of existence, and then looking at these planes of existence as like parallel universes. Whenever we talk about parallel universe, the first thing people are going to think of is that there is a parallel universe that, instead of us talking now here, we are on a spaceship observing observing the globe. Or, you know, I am not in a podcast because I'm actually, you know, a wrestler, Rey Mysterio. I have to get that in.
But that's an inside joke.
It doesn't matter. That's for me, folks. I do a lot for you. That's for me.
I'm sorry, everyone. I can't even remember where that's come from.
Me either. I just remember that we had a conversation about me being a wrestler in a parallel universe, and I'm sticking it back in.
We tried actually recording this before, and I just got too flustered. It was on our lunch break, and it just did not work out for us. Yeah, and that's where that's come from. So thanks for that.
I'll slide it back in.
You're not invited in the jokes. Sorry, guys. Yeah. But, you know, you've had enough jokes. I think we've been pretty jokey during this.
Although, you know, if the Patreon is live, that flustered episode with the jokes, maybe we pop it on for creme de la creme.
Well, I will be talking about the Patreon later. There's some other episodes that people can check out. But anyway, getting back to our topic, it's interesting, to maybe consider the religious aspect and this idea of life and death deities and things like that, and to just consider Donnie Darko again as an analogy for, like, a Christ figure, because he doesn't so he dies and he is born again, but he doesn't realize that he's born again. It's like Jesus, like, coming out of the tomb after his sacrifice. He wasn't sacrificed. What am I saying? It's like not the Aztecs, Carl. My goodness. Like, after his execution, it's like him coming back to life and having no memory of that.
Yeah.
And no one being able to tell him as well. But it's a similar sort of thing going on.
And there's a sort of invisible force moving him through that kind of makes you think that if he doesn't do what he needs to do in this tangent universe, then the original universe won't exist.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting concept as well, isn't it? Because you say about sacrifice, okay, he didn't sacrifice the first time, but he kind of did sacrifice his
he did.
like peaceful existence in the tangent universe.
Yeah,
and
he got into bed, didn't he? He
Yeah.
got into bed because he needed to get into bed.
Yeah.
Like, what would possibly happen if he didn't? That person would be dead. Like, his girlfriend would be dead. He would have shot that guy, etc. There's all of that sort of stuff. I mean, when you think about it, though, that then removes the good work that he did to sort of expose that paedophile. But he wakes up and he's remembered it and things like that.
And so does everybody else.
Yeah, he's had at least a slight impact on him.
Yeah.
And it's like there is these different parallel universes, but then there is that sort of shaky, crossing of a threshold where one universe is touching the other one. But yeah, I like that. There's so many different characters in popular fiction that could similarly be linked to the allegory of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And these life death deities and stuff like that. Goku from Dragon Ball Z, he famously very early on died and then came back to life.
Well,
then he did it over and over again.
You could argue that Dragon Ball is Journey to the West.
Yeah.
And Dragon Ball Z is the Bible.
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form.
Well, yeah. So you've got and you've got similarities between Goku and Superman, don't you? And then you have similarities between Jesus Christ, Goku, and Superman, because it's an alien coming to Earth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perhaps from
Is Jesus
a
Christ
different
an alien
world.
from
Well, it's heaven, isn't it, mate? Like,
different plane of existence? Yeah,
heaven could be a planet. They could all be aliens, couldn't they?
I kind of like that idea. Conceptually better.
It's like Kal-El
than
sort of thing.
just clouds.
Yeah.
That'd get boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Yeah. And also physically impossible.
Yeah.
It'd have to be a cloud, but it's just a magic trick.
But we're applying our own understanding or lack of understanding. The buoyancy of a cloud is only observable to us. It could be different type of cloud. It could be heavy atoms in there.
It could be a cloud of Aperion.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to wrap up, there's another little concept that I wanted to bring up. Now, we're not going to be talking about like our own experiences with like drug taking and things like that. I categorically deny that I've ever done anything like that. So I don't know
what you're talking about.
I don't want anyone to think otherwise. But we are going to be talking about drugs, etc., and the effect it can have on the brain and everything like that. So there is the possibility that strange encounters and things like that, and when people have, say, for example, taken salvia or other ayahuasca and had DMT experiences and things like that, it's turning into a Joe Rogan podcast, everyone. People are essentially visited by beings from other realities. That's like this whole running like theme throughout almost everyone's experiences, particularly with a more intense ayahuasca trip that can last for a very, very long time. And you go through different stages of, visions and stuff like that. Yeah. Obviously, like we have as a human race, like such a connection to like drugs and things like that. You know, you've got like the theories on like, you know, the stoned ape and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
you know, that you can probably find out more from other podcasts and stuff like that. But yeah, like one person who was able to collect a lot of these stories and consider it in relation to like these beings, whether they're religious or like alien, visiting people and stuff like that, was a guy called Graham Hancock. Have you ever come across Graham Hancock
I
before?
haven't.
So Graham Hancock is, you know, he's got like Netflix series and things like that where he provides like alternate histories, like that's separate to mainstream and stuff like that. And you know, he's kind of like a fringe sort of like thinker. You know, he's not to the level, absolutely no way to the level of someone like David Icke or something like that.
Yeah.
But you know, he's at least like a lot of his ideas about what's the word, ancient civilizations and stuff like that, like poo-pooed in like mainstream circles and stuff. You know, obviously I'm not an expert in any of these, so I can just enjoy both and make my own decisions, you know. But yeah, he's got a book called Supernatural. I read it a long time ago. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it if you're interested in that sort of thing. But essentially, he's given us a quote. If I was to read it, we might feel very sure that there is no more to reality than the material world in which we live, but we cannot prove that this is the case. Theoretically, there could be other realms, other dimensions, as all religious traditions and quantum physics alike maintain. Yeah? Nice way for us to sort of like wrap this episode up.
Yeah.
You know, is the idea that potentially the idea of guardian angels, aliens and things like that, it could be that these visitations and things like that could be different universes.
And it makes sense, right? Because they live in parallel
Yeah.
universes. We see them as separate entities of things running at the same time, but they could be layered on top of each other.
And when you alter your brain state, perhaps you're then able to make that connection and see them. Have you ever had any sort of like paranoid experience like that?
You ever had an ayahuasca trip?
No.
Just a state of being where I've kind of... Yes, so I have had lots of kind of dreamlike states. So I had bouts of insomnia and have lots of experiences where I was asleep but not asleep. And I've seen a lot of different kind of conceptual things that I wouldn't be seeing while being awake. I've never seen, you know, the breaking of the universe and a giant being kind of staring down at me, but I've definitely seen things during kind of that's, you know, where your brain wakes up but you're not quite out of REM sleep. You know, like the sleep paralysis state, and I've seen things that have made me question sort of reality, but then, you know, you wake and your brain kind of normalizes. Yeah. Or at least that's how I rationalize it.
I mean, the body creates DMT, you know, and it's in those like dream states that you're actually then sort of accessing that. It's said to be the chemical that's released, you know, in your final moments and stuff like that. You know, when you're like, you know, through the I saw a tunnel of light, and you know, I saw my friends, and all that stuff. And that's like people get visited by their family and stuff like that when they're on ayahuasca and stuff. There's all sorts of things that's possible. You know, you come out of your body and you see yourself. You know, all sorts of really interesting concepts. But yeah, you can obviously, like, these sort of drugs and things like that, they've always been like available, and that is quite possible that has had an impact on how people see the world and come up with these ideas of Aperian and, you know, the Hindu, concepts of like different realities and stuff. You could see it in all different, you know, areas of culture. You know?
And as humans, one of our basic instincts is to try and make sense of things, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I think is the origin of the theory of parallel universes, trying to make sense of things that are non-tangible to us.
Yeah.
Well, if our universes are layered, or they're, you know, this thing happens and then this cascades and then this thing happens and this cascades, and there are different universes, that makes more conceptual sense than things just being random. We don't like random.
Yeah.
We like things to be sequenced, and I think it's almost a nice form. Right? Just like religion, we go to it because it's comforting, And
Yeah.
I think that parallel universes, the idea that it's not random and everything has a plan and every plane of existence has a reason for existing is comforting.
Thank you for that, Tom. Leaving people with comfort. Before you go, get comfortable. I just wanted to quickly talk about our Patreon. So we're in the process of actually putting it together. You should be able to find us. It's going to be on our link tree, so it should be quite easy to find us. Now, what I wanted to say is some of the topics that we've covered here, like for example ayahuasca, and the history of like drug taking in other religions and things like that. We've got some really interesting episodes that are pre-made, pre-ready for you to go into. We've got like a 2-part episode on Easter Island where we totally go into that entire subject. It's at the moment the stuff on Patreon is myself and a friend of mine called Seb Camm, who is a graphics designer, musician, an all-round great guy. You can find him on social media. He's produced the music for our podcast, which absolutely slaps.
Absolutely slaps.
Absolutely, bam, slaps. So good.
Every time I listen to it, I'm like, oh yeah. you clip that.
Yeah. So yeah, check that out. There's loads more content for you. But if you can't afford that, that's all cool. Just keep follow us on what we have, etc. Add the podcast to your podcast list, because we're really hoping that this really kicks off. And thank you very much.
We want to
for
see
listening.
space, folks.
What's that?
We want to see space.
We want to see space. Yeah, exactly.
If this kicks off, Elon could invite us out.
Yeah, or Elon, or anyone else who has a spaceship. Okay, we're ready. Take us away. Thanks for listening. Here's a disclaimer. We are not experts. We can easily get things wrong in an episode. Our intention is to explore and open up the possibilities for further exploration. Come find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. We would love some interaction. Also, if you can consider supporting us on Patreon, that would help a bunch. Search for 2, that's number 2, Strange Men Pod, all one word. Until next time, keep it strange.